Monday, May 25th, 2020, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Today I want to talk about the uselessness of holding paper money or cash in a bank. And I want to talk about as well how the mainstream press, mainstream economic class denigrate precious metals, especially gold, because gold is the ultimate protector versus inflation. So I want to reference today what has government done to our money and the case for 100% gold dollar. This applies to every country in the world, of course. I am in the UK. I'm going to look at some examples of the inflation that we've had or the rising prices, and also add an editorial the FT wrote 16 years ago. And some of you already know about this, but for my new viewers, they will probably find it interesting just to see how they try to keep the public ignorant, try to keep the public in this fiat currency game, paper money game, which only sucks the effort and the wealth out of people, especially those who are on fixed incomes, those who are retired. But I would say almost everyone really who's not really closely involved with the financial sector, who's not in the top 10%, for example. So I think the best way to first start is to go into what money is, how it came about. So I'll start right from the beginning in Rothbard's book, What Has Government Done to Our Money. You can find this book on the Mises.org website. I'm not sure if they have a free PDF. They might. If they do, I'm going to put it below in the description. So Rothbard talks about money in a free society. I guess that's getting more and more difficult for us to be in a free society, I would say, anywhere in the US or the UK and other parts of Europe. But let's just first look at what money really is. It's not a little piece of paper or a digital bank entry into your account online. Let's have a real look at it. Hopefully this will dispel notions and ideas that government can just create money out of thin air and that everything will be okay. So let's get on with it. So he starts with the value of exchange. That's really important, I think. So he asks the question, how did money begin? Clearly, Robinson Crusoe had no need for money. He could not have eaten gold coins. Neither could Crusoe and Friday, perhaps exchanging fish for lumber, need to bother about money. But when society expands below a few families, the stage is already set for the emergence of money. To explain the role of money, we must go even further back and ask, why do men exchange at all? Exchange is the prime basis of our economic life. Without exchanges, there would be no real money and practically no society. So the other thing I would say, all the manipulation of the markets. Markets are places where you exchange goods for money and vice versa. That disrupts economic and social life. This is what the central bankers have been doing for a century or more. Depends on what country you are, of course, but I would say since World War I, it's been a very, very downhill road for society and for the free market and for real exchange. So let's continue. Clearly, a voluntary exchange occurs because both parties expect to benefit. An exchange is an agreement between A and B to transfer the goods or services of one man for the goods and services of the other. Obviously, both benefit because each values what he receives in exchange more than what he gives up. When Crusoe say exchanges some fish for lumber, he values the lumber he buys more than the fish he sells, while Friday, on the contrary, values the fish more than the lumber. From Aristotle to Marx, men have mistakenly believed that an exchange records some sort of equality of value, that if one barrel of fish is exchanged for 10 logs, there is some sort of underlying equality between them. Actually, the exchange was made only because each party valued the two products in different order. That's quite interesting there as well, this concept. Why should exchange be so universal among mankind? Fundamentally because of the great variety in nature, the variety in man, and the diversity of location of natural resources. Every man has a different set of skills and aptitudes, and every plot of ground has its own unique features, its own distinctive resources. From this eternal natural fact of variety come exchanges. Wheat in Kansas for iron in Minnesota, one man's medical services for another's playing of the violin. Specialization permits each man to develop his best skill and allows each region to develop its own particular resources. If one could exchange, if every man were forced to be completely self-sufficient, it is obvious that most of us would starve to death and the rest would barely remain alive. Exchange is the lifeblood not only of our economy but of civilization itself. So that's the most important thing we need to understand about money. We need to begin with exchange, right? We need to see why it's necessary in a modern society. So let's go into barter, because barter is the first step, in my opinion, and Rothbard's opinion, in exchange. So barter. Yet direct exchange of useful goods and services would barely suffice to keep an economy going above the primitive level. Such direct exchange or barter is hardly better than pure self-sufficiency. Why is this? For one thing, it is clear that very little production could be carried on. If Jones hires some laborers to build a house, with what will he pay them? With parts of the house or with building materials they could not use? The two basic problems are indivisibility and lack of coincidence of wants. Thus, if Smith has a plow which he would like to exchange for several different things, say eggs, bread, and a suit of clothes, how can he do so? How can he break up the plow and give part of it to a farmer and another part to a tailor? Even where the goods are divisible, it is generally impossible for two exchanges to find each other at the same time. If A has a supply of eggs for sale and B has a pair of shoes, how can they get together if A wants a suit? And think of the plight of an economics teacher who has to find an egg producer who wants to purchase a few economic lessons in return for his eggs. Clearly, any sort of civilized economy is impossible under direct exchange. So now we come to indirect exchange, and that's where money is involved. And that's why it's so important to have sound money in an economy so that you can keep the economy running. Is it any wonder that they've had to shut down our economies, lock them down? I know they say it's because of the virus, but I think there's something more to it. With the repo crisis, for example, that started back in September of last year, but let's keep going. 3, indirect exchange. But men discovered in the process of trial and error the route that permits a greatly expanding economy, indirect exchange. Under indirect exchange, you sell your product not for a good which you need directly, but for another good which you then in turn sell for the good you want. At first glance, this seems like a clumsy and roundabout operation, but it is actually the marvelous instrument that permits civilization to develop. So that's another interesting or key word there, civilization. Is it any wonder that societies go into disorder or anarchy or mayhem or political instability, famine, war, when the money collapses? Look at Germany in 1923. Look at the Weimar hyperinflation. Look at Venezuela, the state that economy is in because of inflation, and the destruction of indirect exchange. A country that is actually very wealthy in natural resources and human capital. Consider the case of A, the farmer who wants to buy the shoes made by B. Since B wants his eggs, he finds what B does want, let's say butter. A then exchanges his eggs for C's butter and sells the butter to B for shoes. He first buys the butter not because he wants it directly, but because it will permit him to get his shoes. Similarly, Smith, a plow owner, will sell his plow for one commodity which he can more readily divide and sell, say butter, and will then exchange part of the butter for eggs, breads, clothes, etc. In both cases, the superiority of butter, the reason there is extra demand for it beyond simple consumption, is its greater marketability. So yeah, marketability means that almost everyone will want that commodity or good or service. If one good is more marketable than another, if everyone is confident that it will be more readily sold, then it will come into greater demand because it will be used as a medium of exchange. It will be the medium through which one specialist can exchange his product for the goods of other specialists. Now, just as in nature, there is a great variety of skills and resources, so there's a variety in the marketability of goods. Some goods are more widely demanded than others. Some are more divisible into smaller units without loss of value. Some are more durable over long periods of time. Some more transportable over large distances. All of these advantages make for greater marketability. It is clear that in every society, the most marketable goods will be gradually selected as the media for exchange. As they are more and more selected as media, the demand for them increases because of this use. And so they become even more marketable. The result is a reinforcing spiral. More marketability causes wider use as a medium of exchange, which causes more marketability, etc. Eventually, one or two commodities are used as general media in almost all exchanges, and these are called money. So we're almost getting closer to what Rothbard describes as money here. So historically, many different goods have been used as media of exchange. Tobacco in colonial Virginia, sugar in the West Indies, salt in Abyssinia, cattle in ancient Greece, nails in Scotland, copper in ancient Egypt, and grain, beads, tea, shells, and fish hooks. Through the centuries, two commodities, gold and silver, have emerged as money in the free competition of the market and have displaced the other commodities. Both are uniquely marketable, are in great demand as ornaments, and excel in the other necessary qualities. In recent times, silver, being relatively more abundant than gold, has been found more useful for smaller exchanges, while gold is more useful for larger transactions. At any rate, the important thing is that whatever the reason, the free market has found gold and silver to be the most efficient monies. This process, the cumulative development of a medium of exchange on the free market, is the only way money can become established. Money cannot originate in any other way, neither by everyone suddenly deciding to create money out of useless material, nor by government calling bits of paper money or digital entries as well. For embedded in the demand for money is knowledge of the money prices of the immediate past, in contrast to directly used consumers or producers' goods. Money must have pre-existing prices on which to ground the demand, but the only way this can happen is by beginning with a useful commodity under barter and then adding demand for a medium for exchange to the previous demand for direct use, for example, for ornaments in the case of gold. Thus, government is powerless to create money for the economy. It can only be developed by the process of the free market. So there you go to all those, not just socialists and Keynesians, but even people on the right who don't understand what's going on right now, that government, Uncle Sam or the UK Treasury, they're not creating real wealth. It's not real money. Also for the MMT crowd out there, money can only evolve in a free market from people exchanging value. A most important truth about money now emerges from our discussion. Money is a commodity. Learning this simple lesson is one of the world's most important tasks. But you see, they won't teach you this in schools or in universities. They won't teach you Rothbard in university. They won't even teach you about the nature of money. They just say that the pound is the money of the UK, the dollar of the US, and they don't explain to you how it came about. So often people have talked about money as something much more or less than this. Money is not an abstract unit of account, divorceable from a concrete good. It is not a useless token, only good for exchanging. It is not a claim on society. It is not a guarantee of a fixed price level. It is simply a commodity. It differs from other commodities in being demanded mainly as a medium of exchange. But aside from this, it is a commodity. And like all commodities, it has an existing stock. It faces demands by people to buy and hold it, etc. Like all commodities, its price in terms of other goods is determined by the interaction of its local supply or stock and the total demand by people to buy and hold it. People buy money by selling their goods and services for it, just as they sell money when they buy goods and services. So there you go. Hopefully that helped you understand a little more the nature of money. I will continue to look at that book in future videos. So hopefully that will help you understand how money has evolved. Of course, we don't have commodity money anymore. We have fiat currency, which really isn't money. And that's why gold and silver have been going up so much in value for the last 20 years, because bankers, politicians, they have increased the supply of that fiat currency so much, and gold and silver haven't kept up. So those people who have held gold and silver, who have been able to accumulate that, they've protected their purchasing power in the real economy. But if you've held Federal Reserve notes or British pound notes over the years, you're buying less and less, even though we're told that there is no inflation or very little inflation. Just wanted to give you an example. If you had 172 pounds in 2000, now you need 291 pounds and 69 pence to buy those 172 pounds worth of goods. So you've had they call it inflation. I call it a rise in prices of 2.8% a year in this century. And we know that governments lie and tinker with these price data, or CPI, or inflation, if you want to call it. I would say that looking at the price of gold is a much better indication of how things have gotten worse. For the holders of paper money, well, it's not even money that we're holding, it's fiat currency. It's not real money, right? So if you had bought an ounce of gold in 2000, it would have cost 172 pounds. And now it takes 1,400 of those little pieces of paper to get an ounce of gold. So that's been the real inflation of the currency that they force you to use through legal tender laws. And that's the only way they get people to use that currency. And they also force people to pay tax in that currency. And that's what gives it value. And that's why they will keep trying to charge you income tax and all other kinds of tax. Because some people, and even I have said, if they can print all the money for the government spending, why do we need tax as well? That's the dirty secret of this fiat currency system. You need a very efficient tax agency, IRS or HMRC. What the tax does is that it gives a little bit of value to this phony money because you have to pay your taxes with this funny money. And the only way to earn this funny money is through effort, through work. So that's what gives the fiat currency some value. But as we've seen, it's losing value all the time, and that's why you need to be out of it. It's the most dangerous thing for your financial health, in my opinion, to hold extra fiat currency in the bank. Of course, you leave some in there to pay your bills, but leaving thousands and thousands of pounds or hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars in the bank, especially now that you get no interest, is, I think, a very dangerous thing to do, and it will hurt you financially in the years to come. So today is a bank holiday here in the UK, or a holiday, and it's a holiday in the States as well. So I won't go through the markets. I'll just put a screenshot of an editorial that I cut out from the FT back in 2004. And it says, going gold, the pointlessness of holding bullion continues to sink in. I'm not going to go through it right now because this video has been going on for a long time, but you can pause the video. You can do a screenshot yourself and read it and see how the propaganda is really bad, how they really hate that the general public find out about how important gold and actually silver as well are, and how you can protect yourself with these two commodities, commodity monies, as Rothbard says. So there you go. It's not going to get better. And why is that? Well, because governments and central bankers have gone even crazier in the last few months with this crisis. And they've really accelerated the creation of this fiat currency, this imposter, this counterfeit money, really, because that's what it is. You've seen what money really is. Money is effort. It's work. It's exchanging real things, real value. The way to look at it is go back into barter. Would you barter a worthless piece of paper for a piece of cheese or a chicken? No. So that's what you have to think about. And that's why all those people who espouse MMT, that the government can just create the money, they're all wrong, because money has to have some value, and governments don't create any wealth. They just redistribute the wealth. So there you go. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. Think about subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. And you can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and all these other platforms below here. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.